Tell me I stink.
The Babylon Project was our last, best hope for people.
Oh, damn.
A shining beacon in space.
Ham.
All alone in the night.
Now you see why I'm so broke. Most ex-wives just pick up the phone. Not mine.
It was the dawn of the third age of mankind. This is the story.
Come to my place tonight, we'll talk.
Frankly, Ricky Joe, sex with you was always a major disappointment.
Excuse me for a minute.
I still do not understand why you want to break into the system.
Danger, excitement, intrigue.
These orders have forced us to declare independence.
I gotta go back to work now.
To place President Clark under arrest.
Shut up, I didn't say that. Let me do it again. Run around again. Here we go.
Thank you very much. I think we have a handle on your problem. I'm sorry. I was out there for a minute. One more time.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Boxleitner, his roles, his TV shows, his movies, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. Joining me is a longtime friend and a passionate Bruce fan. In fact, we have spent over 3 years talking about Babylon 5, but for some reason, I never had Karen on SLB. So Karen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So before we get to Bruce, I want to talk a little bit about growing up. So I know a little bit because of our friendship, but for the audience, where did you grow up and what kind of TV shows were you watching with your family?
Sure. I grew up in a small town in California, and my formidable years were spent with my parents, where we literally had gotten cable like when it first came out.
Right.
We had a dial on the TV that turned it from regular TV to HBO, which
Oh, how
was
fun.
it was the only channel they offered in our area. Before that, we had that box, and I remember turning to the HBO thing and watching Grease scrambled. So I could hear it and I could see it, but it was scrambled. So that's how I grew up. My TV also had a remote control with a cord.
So I'm older than you, so I can remember just the antenna, right?
Oh,
And yeah, and you
yeah.
go change the channel.
Yep.
My grandparents had this amazing device that would, if the TV channel was fuzzy, there was a device that you could use that would move the antenna.
Having to,
So the antenna would move to try to get a better reception.
yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I was happy when my parents decided to pony up the funds for HBO.
Oh, I bet.
I guess you could say it was my porn.
Yes.
Was watching like musicals and kind of
Sure.
cute guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was trying to watch that sort of thing. I was lucky enough to grow up with 2 older brothers, and they got me into some stuff that I probably wouldn't have been watching, which I think sparked my love for science fiction. Doctor Who
Mhm.
was one of the things my brother got me into. Also the band Chicago, which has had a big influence on me. But I know this isn't a music podcast.
Though, to do a podcast talking about music and your
Sure.
influences.
I loved watching like black and white movies and old TV shows. Our PBS channel had a bunch of old British shows, so I watched those growing up. And then once we got cable with HBO and then the main channels, I was turned on to a lot of different things.
No,
Go
I was
ahead.
going to ask you, were you a one TV family?
I had a television in my bedroom,
Oh,
and it was a kind of a weird thing because my father had built a second story onto our house,
oh,
not by himself. He had help,
yeah.
obviously, but he was a carpenter all his life. They added a second story onto their house that had their like master suite
Okay.
in it and a sewing room and some other stuff. So that means that I could move out of the bedroom I shared with my sister to their old bedroom. And it actually had, my dad had built in this little cubby for the TV. They got a new TV for their bedroom. We had a TV in the living room, And then they just left that TV in there with me. Yeah, I was an outlier. I had a lot of sleepovers where
Yeah.
people could come and watch my TV.
So I remember I had saved up my money. I helped my grandfather at the dairy farm, and he paid me $1 a day to
Uh-huh.
helping him. And so
Sure.
I saved up my money and I bought a little portable black and white TV. And I remember it had a headphone and it had a pillow phone.
Nice.
Like a not a headphone, a headset, like a little, and then a pillow where it would be a little bitty speaker. And it just had a little antenna. And so you couldn't pick up mini shows, but it was so powerful because before then, you had to watch whatever the family was watching.
Exactly.
Yeah, mom and dad picked what we watched.
Oh,
Lest they didn't care, and then you could
right.
watch. And they weren't jerks about, oh no, we can't watch The Partridge Family, or we can't watch something that I want to watch, as long as they didn't want to watch something else. And the idea of being able to watch two channels at one time was just magical to me.
Exactly.
Like I remember when we got our first VCR that you
Oh,
were able
wow.
to tape one channel and then move the channel and you could watch
Yeah.
another channel live.
Had to have that little switch in the back of your TV, right?
Yeah.
A, B.
So one of the things that I see in this
Did
podcast,
you have a console TV?
of course,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, with the
One of my
stereo.
favorite things ever.
And I can remember getting our first color TV.
Oh,
Was
yeah.
amazing. Time Tunnel was just unbelievable seeing that in color.
Yeah,
But
when I first remember a black and white TV.
yeah,
Color was out, but it was way more
yeah,
expensive.
sure.
Same.
And then what I've seen over the years talking to so many people on this podcast is that siblings play a big part. They influence you often on what you want entertainment wise. They may really love something and you go, no, I don't want to watch what my big brother or my big sister watches. But often it's the other way. It's, oh, they love science fiction. So therefore, I want to be with my big brother or my big sister. I want to hang with them. So we're watching that.
Yeah, and that was the thing. It was only one of my brothers that liked science fiction in Chicago and stuff. My other brother was into totally different things and like sports and things like that. And I think that kind of colored my tomboyness. I played sports in junior high and the beginning of high school. That is how I injured myself. But TV, movies, that sort of thing, and music, that came from my other brother. And my parents, they watched TV, but they weren't really TV parents.
Okay.
So it was like my brothers and me and my sister didn't have a lot of sway.
Okay.
But yeah, we would vote on things informally.
Yeah.
At one point, my brothers are 13 and 8 years older than me. They moved out of the house.
Sure.
And it was my domain.
Yeah.
And
I've been very
wow.
vocal about Adrienne Barbeau on Maude.
Oh, yeah.
There was something about there that a little 8 or 9-year-old Jesse knew something was special about that young woman.
Yeah, I had two main crushes at this point. Three, let's say three. They were on TV at least.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford was way up there for me. But as far as TV goes, it was Tom Selleck for Magnum PI, Pierce Brosnan, who was Remington Steele.
Yes.
And then, of course, Bruce Boxleitner. And Scarecrow Mrs. King was my jam. I think that was the first show that I was addicted to. We got a Betamax. My family is the whichever format is best is the one we're going to get.
Okay.
So growing up, I had a Betavision with the top that you press down with the tape in it. And we also had an Intellivision. I don't know if you know what that is, but it was like the answer to the Atari.
Yeah.
And it had the touchpad. It was ahead of its time and the graphics were better, but as far as like popularity goes, it did not win out.
Yeah.
But I had a full library of Mrs. King episodes taped.
Wow.
I sit there and watch over and over. I still have dreams about watching things on videotape. It was my main thing at that point.
So I was curious, can you remember when you first discovered Bruce and what about his acting, his performances spoke to you? So talk to me how you discovered Scarecrow and Mrs. King.
It's so hard for me to remember back to the 80s.
Yes, I understand.
Specifically, but I think it was they heavily advertised Scarecrow and Mrs. King.
Okay.
I think it was ABC, the network it was on. And that was the deal, is like these leading man kind of action shows. And you
Yeah.
notice those three shows, Magnum PI, Remington Steele, and Scarecrow and
Right.
Mrs. King, very much in the same vein. There's
Yes.
a spy, there's a private detective, and a private detective.
Right.
They were very kind of action oriented and driven by the lead character. And so when I saw that being advertised, I was super excited. And of course, he is so attractive. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He's crazy attractive. And he had the hairstyle of the time with the feathered back
Yeah.
hair. And he was just the epitome of male handsomeness. And Pierce Brosnan had that same thing. And of course, the curly hair with Magnum, you cannot go wrong with that. It was like the main one out of the three for me because he was dashing and just, I don't know, manly. Like he looked manly to me. And then him taking this poor hapless woman under his wing and her actually saving him half the time. That was just a dream come true for me.
Had you been aware, had you watched Charlie's Angels? Did you know Kate
Oh,
Jackson?
yes. Kate Jackson. That was another draw for me because
Yeah.
she was my favorite angel.
She was
I
the
mean,
smart
everybody loved,
angel.
that's me with the
Yeah.
glasses in the library and all that. So yeah, she was my favorite. Everybody else was into Farrah Fawcett and Jacqueline Smith.
Poster
Oh
from
yeah,
Farrah Fawcett. Yes.
with the gold bikini. Was it a bikini or just a swimsuit? I don't
Yeah, I
remember.
think it was red, maybe, but it
Oh, was it
showed,
red?
yeah, it, as they say, TAA, and it
Yeah.
was, yes,
I'm sorry.
she was incredibly hot.
I don't think any of the angels were lacking in that department.
No, they weren't. It was really, yeah, beautiful. So you were talking about you saw all the advertising, and it's hard for me to remember. I had to go back afterwards for Scarecrow Greens King when I was aware of Bruce via the Kenny Rogers movies and other
Right,
things.
the
But
gambler.
yeah,
Yeah.
but Babylon 5 is when I really started spending time with him. You know, and one of the things you've talked about when we discussed Babylon 5 is how much Scarecrow and Mrs. King meant to you. Once you listened, like you saw that first one, you were sold from the beginning.
Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
was sold from before the beginning.
Okay.
I really was. And it just secured my happiness in the show. And you can't discount him in Tron either, which was the year before that, which I also went and saw and I loved it. And then I got the videotape and watched it. And wow,
Yeah.
Tron is one of those landmark movies for me too.
Favorite episodes or favorite thoughts on
Okay, well,
Mrs. King?
there was a group of episodes where they went overseas to Germany.
Yeah.
Angersy. Also, Ship of Spies was one of my favorites. It's where they had to pretend to be husband and wife. You know that trope?
Yes.
And they were on a cruise, a boat. And that was a favorite because having to be affectionate with each other, but they hadn't gotten together yet. That was one of my favorites, definitely. I love the things where they got out of, and I'm going to put this in air quotes, DC, because they did not film in DC, obviously. And so like they had a backdrop of like castles and architecture and things like that. And I was way into that. And then the romance was a big selling point for me. So any of the episodes that got even veered close to romance were on my radar.
Yeah. Have you thought about why you started developing a love for romance?
A lot of people would say it's to escape from their life, but I had a pretty decent life growing up.
Yeah.
Loved the idea of romance. Wasn't longing for anything else. I had a serious boyfriend at the time,
Yeah.
but to me, it was just, I think part of it might be that my mother was into romance novels,
Okay.
and she actually got a subscription to Harlequins, which meant every month she would get 4 books in a little box. That was great. And after she was done, she'd let me read them, which might have been a mistake because they were very racy, but
For the time, right?
yeah, oh yeah, for the time. And she got presents, and I know you don't know much about
No.
romance, but the presents line was like the alpha male who's like the big boss and trying to
Yeah.
inflict his will on the young virgin secretary. It was that sort of thing. So they were the most racy of their lines. I grew up, and again, California, my parents weren't permissive, but they were very open-minded.
Right.
I don't think she cared. She was like, my daughter's going to learn this stuff at some point anyway. So
Yeah.
let's just let her read them. And I think that was a lot of it.
Mhm.
I love it. And it is, I think it's the most uplifting kind of thing you can read and watch.
Yeah. One of the things that raising Chris is we would watch movies probably that were not appropriate for his age. The rule was those are adult words and adults can say them,
Yep.
but you can't.
My mom didn't swear. My
Really?
dad swore a lot. Yeah, my
Hmm.
mom was, I heard her say hell once and it shocked me. And I think that kind of had an influence on us. I don't know that they actually came out and said, don't swear in public, but I think it was my mom who set that example for me. So is Chris a big Boxleitner fan?
No, he's a wrestling fan. And so
Sure.
he has Michael P. Michael B. Jordan
Mm,
from Friday Night Lights.
yeah,
That's one of the things. And so he'll do anything that he's in. And he really likes, Denzel Washington. Like
sure.
he's willing almost anything Denzel, oh yeah, let's try it.
Isn't. So unfortunately, that means you couldn't have him on the podcast, right?
Exactly.
That's sad.
Yeah, will do.
This,
I know we talked about this when we were discussing Babylon 5, but for this audience, we don't necessarily have the same crossover. Being a big Bruce fan, how did you not check out Babylon 5? Or is it because he didn't start till the second season?
yeah, I think that's part of it. At that point, I hadn't watched it yet. And like I mentioned on the Babylon 5 podcast, Voyager was going on at the same time.
Yeah.
And that was my main thing. I loved Voyager so much.
Hmm.
Of course, it's not TNG.
Yeah, sure.
I know people would yell at me for that because the original series, I did also like the original series, but Voyager, I loved it. And I didn't get into Babylon 5. And then when I heard he was going to be on, I was sorely tempted. But there, again, in the 90s, there really wasn't a way to easily go back and watch those
No.
other episodes. I might have been a little lost, I thought. And so
Yeah.
I just never got into it.
Yeah, we talk about that there is that. I remember when I was young thinking how cool would it be that if I was rich that I could buy a movie projector.
Right?
Like how cool would that be that you could watch whatever episode of Star Trek you wanted anytime?
Oh, yeah.
That'd be rich.
I've had those same thoughts. Yeah, growing up, I had a friend who their parents in their basement was like a rec room,
Yeah.
and they had a big one of those, it was a projection TV.
Okay.
the three lights at the bottom that
Yeah.
would project the thing onto the screen. And it was
Hmm.
terrible, really. But it was huge and it was like the biggest TV I'd ever seen. And so whenever I spent the night at her house, we did sleepovers all the time. We would sleep down there. They had the pull-out couch, and we just lay in the pull-out couch and watch movies all night.
So I know this is always an awkward part of the podcast, but it, well, first off, other things as you continue to follow Bruce's show, any other highlights, and then we'll talk about if any possible lowlights.
Lowlights, sure.
Yeah.
I loved all the Western stuff that he was in. He was in a Louis L'Amour
Yeah.
adaptation. And of course, The Gambler, I watched, there was like 3 or 4 of those, I think.
Yeah.
He was also in Bring Him Back Alive, which
Hmm.
I liked as well. And a Wyatt Earp thing. He played Wyatt Earp. So I loved him in those, which like showed off his super attractiveness, right?
Yeah.
And there was also this TV movie that I really loved. It was before, like just before Scarecrow and Mrs. King. It was called Bare Essence. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Okay.
It was a melodrama, soap opera-y kind of thing. Bruce Boxleitner, Linda Evans, Jeannie Francis, Lee Grant, Joel Higgins, Donna Mills, Jonathan Frakes was in it. That's where he met Jeannie Francis on the set of this movie. John Larroquette, all these people. And it was a TV show along the lines of a soap opera which centers on one young woman, Tiger Hayes, as she starts up a perfume company. Bare Essence was the name of her perfume
Yeah.
company. The usual soap plots of adultery, romance, corruption, and greed abound. And it was a TV movie. It was 3 hours long, but it was, I think they did it over 3 nights.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was something I watched and went back to because again, romance and Bruce Boxleitner, I loved it.
Yeah. I'm really happy that, mm, every once in a while we'll catch him on like a Hallmark or Great
Mhm.
American movie playing a supporting. I thought it was interesting. On Supergirl, he played a president.
A
On,
vice president until Linda Evans was
yes,
office.
yes, you did. And then the Orville.
Plays
Still,
dads every so often on those
right.
Hallmark movies and uncles. Yeah, I
And
like him on those movies.
and candidly, still a damn good looking man. Mhm.
Definitely. And what is he in his 70s? But
Yeah,
man, he looks fantastic, I think.
yeah,
He is like a silver fox.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So anything in his career that didn't work for you?
Not a hard question for me
Oh,
at all.
okay.
Was such a disappointment for me. He was in cuffs and it was something I was so looking forward to watching.
Yeah.
It had, oh my goodness, Slater, Christian Slater in it as
Okay.
well, where they played like a father and son police team. And that sounded so great to me.
Yeah.
And I went to see it in the theaters. He played Brad Cuffs.
Okay.
Okay, with a K. I went to see it at the theater and oh my God, was it bad. It is
That's
his worst movie, I think. It has a 5 rating on IMDb. I don't know if it even qualifies to be in Rotten Tomatoes. I haven't looked it up, but man, it is. I cannot say any worse things about this movie.
that's a wonderful answer.
Yeah.
So, what do you wish he had been able to do that he hadn't done? And this is always tough for me because I think he's had an amazing career. He's
He
played leading
has.
mans, he's played fathers, he's done westerns, he's done science fiction, he's done regular drama.
Yeah.
So,
It's hard for me to say. I wish he would have broken into movies better,
yeah,
more like a leading man type role. Harrison Ford, again, I mentioned him earlier. I was way into Star Wars growing up
yeah,
as well. And Harrison Ford has had a pretty good career, not only being a leading man, but also being that kind of the acerbic, not sidekick, but
yeah,
second to the main character. And I think where Bruce has done a lot of TV movies where he's the lead, He
Yeah.
never really did that in regular
Yeah.
movies, and I would have liked to see that. But he was super busy on TV, so it's hard for me to complain.
So I'm going to end with, how happy were you when you saw Bruce show up in Chuck?
Yeah, he played Devin's father on Chuck. He was on a couple of episodes, and wow, that's a spy show, Chuck.
Yeah.
And every so often they would have a famous TV spy play another
Yeah.
part on the show, and he was one of those. And man, that was fantastic. I did a Supergirl podcast. I've done a million podcasts. I also did a Chuck podcast with our good friend Lou.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fantastic to see him show up there.
Yeah.
He was also, I think, in an episode of Castle, wasn't he?
I So what should I've asked you that I haven't, Karen?
I don't know.
Okay. I can't think of anything either. All right. So I end every podcast with the Tron question. And the question I want to know is, do we think Bruce's character, Tron, continued to live on?
Yeah, I've been really looking forward to answering this question. I think he was the hero of that movie, even though he wasn't the main character, and he got the love story and all that. I like to think that his inner character lived on, where Alan Bradley also had a happy ending in real life.
Nice.
Yeah, I'd like to think that.
Good. I love that ending. All right. So, Karen, if someone wants to reach you, how can they?
They can reach me at Aliveria on all the social media. That's Aleveria. And I have a blog called Ali Stuff. And the landing page there has a lot of links that you might be interested in.
Very nice. All right. As always, Karen, it's lovely catching up with you. In a few minutes, we're going to talk Severance. Please check out, yes, as I make my blatant plug, Karen and I are 2/3 of the JKL Media podcast, where we are currently discussing Severance. We've discussed tons of pop culture things, including Babylon 5 and classic movies, classic TV shows. So I hope you go over there and check us out.
Those
Yeah.
are not the best episodes, but
No, what are you going to do? So, everyone, thank you so much. Be safe, be kind, and we'll talk soon. Goodbye. Set Listing Bruce, a Bruce Boxleitner podcast, is part of the Pantheon Podcast Network. We are not affiliated with Bruce Boxleitner in any way, but he is our inspiration, and there is always an open seat available for Bruce if he wants to join the podcast. Remember, faith manages.